Okay, welcome up to the Level Up podcast. I'm your host with the most. Okay, that was unscripted. Welcome up to the Level Up movement. This is a space for people who want to move better, run better, breathe better, and understand their own body. In today's episode, we're going to talk about what do the feet actually do. So your feet are pretty wild. They have 26 bones, 33 joints, 19 muscles, and 100 ligaments. And that's in each foot. Both feet together account for basically a quarter of all the bones in your body. Now, the wild fact is the arch is uniquely human. No other primate has an arch of their foot. We're also the only mammals that have a horizontal diaphragm when we run. And we think basically that arch was, well, researchers think, other people think, that arch was designed specifically to run. Okay, so should I carry on with my intro? Every conversation you built had a reason at one time, so let's figure out the fundamentals and what matters together. Because remember, it's easier to be changed than it is to change. So join me as we explore healthy movement and level up together. Okay, so what does the foot actually do when we run and walk? I am going to press record. I know we're live. That's working. Has anyone joined in on us? Yes. Someone that's listening to this and recording on a podcast is like, no ways. Yeah, we're live. Just checking. Okay, so, these crazy facts about the feet, and just, I think one of the most interesting things for me is the fact that it has more nerve endings in your feet than your hands. It's probably one of the most densely innervated parts of our body. So it's definitely got a reason and a function. So I'll tell you a cool story. There was a kid, and he wasn't crawling. And the parents were really worried about this. They were like, okay, at first it's fine. He's crawling more. He'll have stronger shoulders and hands and dexterity. And then after a while, you're like, oh, hang on. I really want my kid to walk, right? So they had like wooden, shiny floors. And I suggested that they take the kid to the beach. And so little kid gets out, goes to the beach, puts his sand in the feet, stand-ups, and starts walking and running. Okay, so the mom's elated, sending pictures and videos to the dad. He comes home early, they meet at home, kid's not walking and standing. So the narrative was like, hey, well, what just happened? No, we were at the beach. Goes back to the beach, kid can walk and stand. So when you get like a strong stimulus up in the feet, there's an upstream connection in our hips and pelvis, which is sort of stimulated. So there's a massive relationship, and we'll discuss some of that relationship in this podcast between your feet and your hips, and feet activation and hip activation, and the timing and the sequencing and this whole relationship. As much as I can, that I'm confident in, okay, we'll try and unpack those relationships. I think we're at a point in human life now where kids are basically wearing shoes before they even out the crib. Okay, so it's very common to see a sort of very young baby in a cot, unable to even crawl yet, maybe with shoes on. And the strength of your feet, the integrity of the feet, the stimulation of the feet, the development of your feet starts right from the start. If you watch a baby crawling, he's bending his big toe, developing a medial arch. When babies crawl and they sort of rock back, they are at that point stimulating their glute max through a stretch reflex in order to propel themselves forward. So you're developing this foot arch hip extension relationship right from the get-go. Babies crawl, hold their big toe, try and put it in their mouth, happy baby pose. So there we go. And a lot of that, I think, that neurodevelopmental issue we're missing. Kids all wear shoes by the time they go to kindergarten. And so by the time you're an adult, you've really can have very, very weak feet. And I think a lot of people listening to this podcast will say, okay, yeah, I'm really nervous about walking around barefoot. or I'm not confident in my ability to walk barefoot. People have strong visceral reactions. I mean, people were like absolutely enamored with sort of born to run and this notion of a natural running and minimalist running. But many people, when they go for a run barefoot, the tactile sensation, remember those 200,000 nerve endings, can often sort of travel up your foot and give you almost a sense of euphoria and joy. You know, one of my really great sort of visceral, pleasurable experiences is running barefoot on a beach. You know, there's the waves, it's cold sometimes, it's not so cold. The sense of the sand in your feet, it's absolutely magical. You know, but a lot of us have lost our birthright to shoes. So when we say lose your birthright, I don't just sort of mean it. I mean, like, well, you know, you're a US citizen and now you're not a US citizen anymore. Like, good luck getting back into the country, okay? So, you know, we'll talk a little bit of exercises, the most valuable exercises, how to paint yourself out of a corner, the risks of minimal, you know, there's a really good stats on how incredibly strengthening minimal footwear is for your feet, but there's also very, very high risk. And so it's kind of a polarized space. You know, someone recently posted a clip where I said, yeah, I really think most people should learn to run barefoot a little bit. And, you know, the negative reaction to that was quite strong. And people were saying, well, that's irresponsible to say. But yes, because you lost your birthright, you know. I mean, imagine telling a primal hunter-gatherer, you know, running barefoot's dangerous. You know, so you're so far painted into the corner that it is dangerous for you, and you need to recognize that you need to be very careful and cautious. You know, but you know, please understand that, you know, your feet on a scale of 10 being glass and 0 being glass and 10 being super resilient, so I can run across rocks in the desert sun. You know, you're probably very close to the 0 end of the spectrum. And which is fair enough, you know, and how do you paint yourself out of that corner is probably what we really want to discuss. So, yeah, and I think there's a lot of foot injuries. People that have foot injuries are often very, very frustrated by them, and they can be very debilitating. I mean, you literally can't bear load. I like to think there's a deeper, it's almost like Achilles. Okay, who was Achilles, the greatest warrior of all time? What was his weak link? His Achilles. Okay, you know, you cut someone's Achilles and they're out of the fight, as it were. You know, you can't run or you break your foot, you're out of the fight. If you were in the savannah and you were, you know, if a horse breaks its foot, it gets put down. If you limp across the savannah, you know, you're the prey, you're the weakest link. So there's an incredibly sort of psychological component to this as well. Okay. Yeah, generally barefoot populations have bigger feet muscles and stiffer arches. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. But here's a cool stat: is like something like wearing minimal shoes for 6 months end up with 57% stronger toes. And I think that there's more to those sort of studies where almost a notion of walking around barefoot or possibly in minimal shoes will strengthen your feet more than a foot strengthening program will. And we'll talk a little bit about this because, you know, this is really a space to not have strong opinions and an ego-driven sense of, you know, this is the way. I think you really, really do need to think clearly and, you know, hold your knowledge lightly in your hand and be pretty fluid because it's, you know, Leonardo da Vinci marveled at the foot because of its incredible intricacy. It's incredible. Right. So let's just go through the gait cycle because that's what the logo says, what the heading says. I think at this stage it's important to mention our sponsors. So I first heard about Level Up movement through myself, and I first, I want to thank me because I basically sponsored the podcast. So if you're interested in your feet, fixing your feet, we sell a foot fixer, and the foot fixer comes with a free sort of foot integration course. So that's who's sponsoring this podcast. Thank you, Lawrence, and the foot fixer. Okay. So in gait cycle, what do? We have two sort of phases, the stance phase, which is sort of when your foot's on the ground, and the swing phase. Now, really importantly, we need to distinguish there's walking, there's running, and there's sprinting, and they kind of separate. I mean, they're very, very similar, and there's a lot of crossover, but they're not the same. The big difference between walking and running is that walking at some stage you have double ground contact, and running at some stage you have zero ground contact. Okay, so running is 1 foot in the ground or no feet. Walking, by definition, is at some stage you have 2 feet in the ground and then 1 foot, 1 foot. If you're Olympic race walking, maybe that's not the case. That's a joke, by the way. Okay, so stance phase in walking, you spend about 60% of walking in stance phase with your foot in the ground. In running, it's about 30 to 40%. Okay, the swing phase in walking is then 40%, and in swing phase in running is 60 to 70%. So you spend less time on the ground, relatively speaking, running. Yeah, obviously, but the forces are more, and significantly more. I think we talk about 3.5 times your body weight per foot when you're running, and thereabouts. I don't know, the force changes. Peak forces might be more. Certainly sprinting, I think that you get up to 10 times your body weight. Walking apparently is about 1.1 times your body weight. So your body weight plus 10%, which is significantly less than running. Okay. But I think the big thing to understand about your foot, it kind of has 3 jobs. In running, I like to help people when I think through, if you went through sort of what your hips do in running, we have this pre-tense phase just before it lands. Okay. You don't have to pre-tense your feet. Consciously. This is going to happen at the reflex autonomic level. Okay, that's why you've got so many nerve endings in your feet. But in the beginning, your foot's like a mobile adapter. Think about it as like all road tires versus racing tires, or mountain bike tires versus road tires. They need to be pliable. They need to adapt to the ground. They need to be malleable. If you have a very stiff, rigid foot and you land on a pebble, it's going to hurt. A lot of people have very stiff, rigid feet, and they're terrified of Lego. Okay. The second sort of big idea in your foot, it's a spring. Okay, so boing, it stores and releases elastic energy. Okay. The third notion is at push-off, it kind of becomes a rigid lever. So it sort of goes from pliable, springy to rigid, according to sort of best understanding and practice. So there's a, you know, it's not I pre-tense my foot, I land with a stiff, hard foot, and then I cycle off the stiff, hard foot. Yeah. It's probably land soft and pliable, load the spring, travel forward, propel off the rigid lever, as it were. Okay? So again, it's almost like with your hips or your pelvic floor, you know, there's a sense of pre-tensing, tensing, letting go, then driving. So I think it's really, you know, this happens so quickly. It's like a quarter of a second. You know, 0.2 of a second is also sort of 0.3 of a second, a third of a second, a fifth of a second, they're around, really, really quick. And so you need to, you know, in your conscious mind, you might not be able to think your foot can go through 3 phases in a quarter of a second, but it does, or it should. So again, pre-stance, just before your foot hits the ground, there will be pre-tensing. It'll be linked to pre-tensing your pelvis and your pelvic floor and your hip stabilizers. It's not something that you have to cue or think about or pre-tense. In sprinters, especially novice sprinters or young sprinters, you can be cued to tense your foot to hit the ground, but remember, sprinting is very different from running. So, you know, you really are trying to create a more rigid structure, because we want really efficient transfer of energy. And I'm not going to get too much into the sprinting and sprinter's feet, but that is a cue that is applicable for young sprinters at a certain point in time. I think later on, you know, I don't think Usain Bolt ever thought about stiffening his feet when he sprinted. Well, I don't know, but I would imagine he moved on from that, right? So then we have contact and loading, and this is like the mobile phase. So generally speaking, your foot lands in a healthy mechanics with about a 2% supination, so slightly roll to the outside of your foot. I think it's really helpful to think that the wings are on the outside of your feet, just like Mercury and the Roman and Greek gods. Okay, and then as you sort of landing, it will pronate. So a little bit of pronation is healthy. We talk about, by definition, about 5 to 6%, but even more pronation could probably be healthy. And certainly if you stay supinated, it's probably not ideal, but that might be you. You would be really careful how you try and influence these to try and move them. Like if you don't like the numbers, to try and move them in the right direction, it's probably not the best idea to try and do it consciously while you run. Okay, so you do your work at home and it'll start expressing and showing itself up in your run. Okay, so we land supinated. We then have a graded sense of controlled pronation, which is good. The arch flattens, okay, which is good. Your shin rotates inwards, so internal rotation of the tibia. I've got a YouTube video with tibial internal rotation. This is absolutely really, really important that you be able to have internally rotating tibias because it unlocks healthy ankle dorsiflexion and the rate helps control the rate of pronation and unlocks healthy pronation for you. Okay. And so basically the midfoot unlocks at this stage. So this is really, really important. A lot of people, I think, when you're doing foot rehab, foot exercises, or thinking about the foot, or you let's say, I don't know, some people have been cued to run on your forefoot, you sort of end up with a locked midfoot that can't unlock. And at this point, you know, there's pronation, gentle internal rolling of sort of the ankle, but you need a mobile midfoot at this point. That small amount of rotation is really, really critical to healthy ankle function, pronation, knee, and hip function. You do not want a locked midfoot at this stage, or midfoot that's always locked. Yeah, and then sort of the flattening the arch, the gentle pronation. This is shock absorption. It's adapting to the ground. You know, if you were running barefoot and you happen to put your foot in a big stone, you have to conform to the stone. If your foot's too rigid, you'd fracture your foot. Okay, so or you need to adapt to the ground. Imagine running on uneven ground barefoot. You have to adapt to the terrain. You're not going to change the rock. You need to change to the rock. Okay, so we need sort of this notion of adaptable feet, which I think many people, you know, the feet are too rigid, too locked. You might be pretensing too much. You've got all these notions of the tension that you need in your foot. You know, just big picture at this stage, if you're leaning forward or you were taught to lean forward from the ankles, often that sort of puts your plantar aspect of your feet down a little prematurely, a little much, or locks your midfoot. I'm not a big fan of that cue. We prefer being stacked and then shifting forward. A little bit of forward lean's okay. Okay, so basically, you know, with pronation, excessive pronation, rapid pronation, a foot that goes into pronation doesn't come back out of pronation. Those are not ideal, but pronation itself is healthy and normal. Okay, so we don't want excessive pronation. We don't want sudden rapid pronation, and we don't want to not be able to get back out of pronation. Foot fix is fantastic for this because you can just practice, you know, pronation, neutral, supination, neutral, and you can do it with your foot in neutral, or you can do it loading the lateral column, or you can do it loading the big toe sort of column, the first ray column. Get really competent in this space, and it really, really helps most people so quickly. You know, we'll do some exercises that you can do, but the big three would be that exercise is just described, short foot exercises, and for me, neutral ankle, soft toes. Right, so in the mid stance, as you sort of travel, your hip is now traveling over your foot because your foot's not going anywhere. Okay, it's stationary on the ground. Your body weight passes over the foot, and the arch now compresses and lengthens, storing elastic energy. And again, if your midfoot's rigid, you're probably not storing elastic energy. So that energy is loaded in the plantar fascia and the long tendons. Okay, the intrinsic foot muscles actively tune the arch stiffness. Okay? So the more force you put through the ground, the more your intrinsic foot muscles will sort of strengthen up. And this happens subconsciously, unconsciously, reflexively. Okay? And this is where if you have a weak feet, poor foot biomechanics, you're just hemorrhaging energy. It's incredible how much quicker, more efficient, and more economical you can run if you really optimize your foot mechanics, and which is complicated. It doesn't mean a strong feet. It means a foot that can land, adapt, store elastic energy, be mobile in the midfoot, and then sort of use that stored elastic energy and time the elastic energy release to the same time as sort of hip extension. That is just, it's like an orchestra playing a beautiful piece. There's a lot of moving parts, but moving in that direction really makes a big difference to your running, your relationship with running, your efficiency, your speed. When people get this right, often athletes will say, I can run faster. Like they know, because humans are really good at anticipating, well, brains are. Your nervous system's really good at anticipating what it can and can't do based on prior experiences. And so suddenly when people's sort of feet really have a sense of, we'll talk about tensegrity in your feet, right? When their foot sort of clicks into place for them, they literally have a sense of, oh, my top end speed's improved. I can run faster. I can, like your sort of internal assessment of what you can and can't do gets reframed before you do it. Okay, so it's common. People say, "Wow, I just know I can run that time." You're doing strides and you say, "I've never run strides that fast before." I'm gonna stop saying So I think now I've derailed myself by saying by saying don't say So yeah, your foot, that's where it leaks energy. And we'll go through sort of what your foot does need to do at that time. So, and if your foot is unstable, is wobbling, your intrinsics don't fire, you're going to rob that energy from somewhere else. So your hips might be working overtime to try and control sort of this general trend of collapsing. I think it's pretty self-evident if you think about it. Like, you're only as strong as your foundation, your base. And when you're running, 3.5 times your body weight is going through a very, very small area. I liken it to your wrists. I think everyone understands I need a neutral wrist if I'm going to punch something. Like I've got a heavy punch bag, it's hard. I'm not going to punch it with a badly aligned wrist. Instantaneously, I've never thought about it, but boxers will tense their fists when they punch. You probably end up learning how to pre-tense and tense and let go your fist very quickly and rapidly, because you do want to unclench your fist after you've punched. Otherwise, you can end up with sort of very tight shoulders. So people's ankles, I don't think I can recall someone, maybe 1 or 2 people that have a reasonable understanding of anyone that has any sort of sense of ankle alignment. You put a lot of force through your ankles. And again, we'll talk about like structurally thinking about how to get your foot into the right shape, in the right place, in the right sort of things safely. And one of them, 100%, one of the quickest ways to do that is to figure out, I need a neutral ankle. Okay, so that's where we are with that. Okay, then here, this is the slightly controversial part of this conversation. We have push-off. Now, sort of modern science or understanding of biomechanics is going to tell you your foot now becomes a rigid lever, okay? And your foot resupinates. Okay, I'm pretty on board with that. Sort of coming out of supination, out of pronation now, your gentle pronation. Your shin probably going to externally rotate, okay? I don't think that, well, let's just tell you what science is, okay, or what modern biomechanics did. So now your midfoot joints lock and the foot becomes stiff, okay? The windlass mechanism, which is the big toe bends and it increases your arch and shortens your foot. So your toes extend, or your forefoot extends, and you create sort of more arch, higher arch foot, which now becomes rigid for force transfer, okay? Your plantar fascia wraps the metatarsal heads, and that's almost like they wrap around the bone and make it very, very resistant to fracturing, because those bones are small. So we want a healthy plantar fascia that can actually do its job, because it's very protective for foot injuries. And basically, the heel and forefoot almost pull together, as your arch rises, okay, and results in a stiff spring-loaded lever. For me here, we want this notion of triple extension. So your hip fires, your hip extends, then your knee extends, then your ankle extends. That will be the sequence of firing off this rigid foot. Okay, and intrinsic foot muscles are really important here. Your windlass alone can't strengthen the foot at this stage. And then sort of a point that I have a little bit of an issue with, the big toe drives your push off. Okay, we're the only primate, so the only primate with this long arch, and we're also the only primate with a non-opposable big toe. It's built for this. So chimpanzees' big toes like their thumb, because they're not runners. We're runners. Our big toe decided it's not going to pick up objects. It's now going to help propel us forwards, which I'm totally on board with. I think at this stage, what I'm not that on board with is some people, when we roll off the forefoot, is really dictated a lot by upstream biomechanics. So I think you should be very careful of trying to push off your big toe or trying to have a sense of big toe push off, because you more want your foot to be the right shape, and then the big toe will end up pushing off. If you do the right things happen. I'm not sure consciously you should be trying to push off with your big toe at this stage. And some people, roll off on the outside. So if you've got really tight hips, some people have quite a lot of femoral internal rotation when they run. And you can, a lot of really world-class runners will run off sort of, they'll go pigeon toe and roll off their baby toe more. Some are pretty neutral, and then some are big toe biased. Okay, sprinting, most sprinters, especially when they're out the blocks, especially when they're accelerating, it's a very external rotation pattern with supination. And yes, that's like kind of big toe driven. So sprinting will strengthen your big toe and strengthen those mechanics. Once you up at speed and you're sprinting, your mechanics might shift or change. So there's an acceleration and drive phase, which is different from sort of, if I was running at 200, what does my running look like at 150 meters? Whereas in a sprint, you're basically accelerating for the first 30 meters, trying to hold on for 60. And, I don't think if you can't open up and find your relaxed upright sprinting speed, you probably start deaccelerating after that, so the great sprinters seem to be able to hold on to their speed. Okay, so we'll get back a little bit more to mechanics. So that's the sort of phases of Footstrike. I'd add pretense in there, and I'd add after the foot leaves the ground. Really important for me is you want to relax the front of your ankle. Relaxing the front of your ankle in running will relax the front of your hips. It'll open up your stride at the back. It'll increase your stride length. Remember, there's only two ways to basically run faster. One is to increase your stride length. The other one is to increase your turnover. Improving the efficiency and function of your foot will improve your turnover. Okay? If you don't have great feet and foot biomechanics, increasing your turnover will not improve your foot biomechanics or probably your running. Okay, so I much prefer to work on improving foot biomechanics and ankle alignment and hip function to improve cadence, rather than working on turnover as a cue, because it doesn't help you solve any of these problems. It might even make it worse. And I'm certainly not chasing speed. I'm not saying, okay, so some people have been taught, probably it might be relevant if you're teaching an NFL player to run faster, or a young kid to run faster, sort of curling your toes up towards your knees because it decreases your lever arm. You want a relaxed front of your ankle, because that's really important for hip drive and hip extension. And, a lot of people do butt flicks or try and get their heels to the butt. If you load your foot and calf and lower leg appropriately, your heel will kiss your butt when you're running from elastic recoil. There's no drill required. That happens in your running as a result of doing things well, okay? Foot strike, heel strike versus midfoot versus forefoot. I don't like the conversation. I'm a forefoot striker, attaching a label to yourself. Remember, we are often, no person steps in the same river twice, because you're not the same person and it's not the same river. Okay, so at this moment in time, I might be, not I am. Heel striking is not bad. A lot of people, the vast majority of people, we were talking to people in shoe development and the shoe sales company, and they're talking about forefoot strike and forefoot running. And like, well, where are these forefoot strikers? Where are these forefoot runners? Because 95% or more of the general population heel strike. So you got a whole line of shoes for 2% of the population. And even in elites, for marathon runners, 72% of elite marathon runners will heel strike. Some of the shoes almost don't have, they just almost neglected the heel counter, the stability of the shoe from the midfoot transition to a heel. Even really fast forefoot runners, their heel often kisses the ground, or they run, let's say, sort of more midfoot. So, really think. And one other thing, we talk about barefoot running. Okay, well, let's just say what the industry out there thinks, right? So, heel strike, they would say, is most common in shod recreational runners. I get it. Dan Lieberman also said, when you put barefoot runners, they run totally different, but we're going to get to that in a moment. And the problem with a heel strike or excessive heel strike is you get a sharp force spike, and people are convinced, and I think there's justification to that really predisposes you to injury, and kind of shifts the load to your knee. Right. Midfoot strike is defined as land on your heel and forefoot almost at the same time. So your foot lands sort of flat. I get what people say with a midfoot. It doesn't make sense to me. Your midfoot's supposed to be unlocking. You got contact points, your heel, and you have a forefoot fat pad. You don't have a fat pad necessarily, a little bit, but, callus in your midfoot. Some people's midfoot doesn't even touch the ground. So anyway, and then we have a forefoot strike, which is defined as ball of foot first, and then the heel drops afterwards in some, or not at all, in some. Generally, even world-class sprinters at full 100 meters sprint speed, often their heels are kissing the ground. Okay, so even world-class in a 100-meter sprint, you're going to find there is heel contact. So I would define, for me, on a spectrum, right, I think some kids are tippy-toe walkers. Their heels never hit the ground. Generally, if that kid walks into your practice, you're going to refer them out for remedial therapy. It's almost a certainty they're on some sort of neurodivergent spectrum, so there will be, it's a finding that's indicative of, like, all is not well, and you need to get to the bottom of what's going on here. Okay, they might be forefoot runners and not heel down runners. Okay. The benefits of forefoot striking apparently stores more elastic energy, certainly in the lower leg. Okay, obviously sprinters, they say common in barefoot runners. I'm going to give a point on this now, and it certainly shifts the load to the Achilles, calf, and forefoot. Now, I watched a kiddies race, sort of like, I think 12 or 14 and under, down to 8 or 6, and they did a swim, and then they ran up a pavement tarmac, right? And some of them had shoes and some of them didn't have shoes. Not a single one of those kids self-selected to run on their forefoot. Okay, so we're watching, 30 children. Not one had a forefoot first contact running. And they're all trying to race, and they're running, and their dads are triathletes, and they're training, and they swim and bike and run. So I think it's very dangerous to say barefoot running, you land on your forefoot. Zola Budd is probably one of the greatest examples of barefoot running, heel strike. My wife ran barefoot until she was 23. She doesn't even know what part of her foot hit the ground. If she had to think, she probably thinks her heel. I'm not totally, someone's telling me, you should go to Africa and see kids and people running naturally and what it looks like and the forefoot running. And I'm like, yeah, I'm from Africa. I worked with elite African runners for decades. Can you show me the forefoot runners? Are they in the room with us now? Okay. But anyway, so there's neither that nor that. Let's just hold that part of our knowledge lightly in our hands. Okay. I think the big deal is changing or coming at your foot with an agenda of how it should hit the ground is a really big mistake. Where your foot hits the ground is really important. So if you have a sense of forward shift, if you have a really good running posture, if you have flexible enough hips, if you know how to use your hips, and your arm placement is correct. We call this sort of stuff sort of angel versus zombie running, so learning the relative difference, like Goldilocks, too hot, too cold, just right for me at this time, at this moment, for where I am. Generally, your feet start landing closer underneath your hips, and that's way more important than what part hits the ground first. Okay. And that's that. if your foot lands too far in front of you, it doesn't matter what part of the ground hits you, you're going to kind of be in trouble. And often tight hips will throw your feet out in front of you. Tight tibialis anterior will do the same. Locked ankle dorsiflexion in the front will do the same. Head forward posture will do the same. Hands forward. So one of those, or an anterior tailbone. So let's say you fell on ice and knocked your tailbone forward. Those are the big sort of things, I would say, off the top of my head, that tend to make you throw your feet too far out in front of you. And I would address those and then see where your feet land and say, oh shit, that made a big difference. And it made a big difference to my running. When you get this right, remember we talked about your midfoot must be unlocked. Your midfoot must be unlocked because it really helps unlock your pelvis, and it really helps you have relative downward translation of your femur and relative internal rotation of your femur in mid-stride, which is really good for healthy hips and lower back. So those two are synergistic. If you land on your forefoot, you lock your midfoot, you have a locked midfoot, it's very, very hard to transition in that mid stance to let your hips go, to open up, to sort of relax the extension inhibitors or find your glutes or your glute drive or your hip extension drive. And it's pretty hard on your hips and your pelvis and your femur. So, for me, if you are a forefoot striker, it comes with high sort of risk. And I don't think it's that sustainable. So I think one of the best examples of forefoot running would be Alistair Brownlee, okay? But Alistair Brownlee had magnificent hips, and they knew what they were doing, okay? So he had this, his hips were 100% functional and really well developed, and he had massive hip extension. You can contrast it to his brother Johnny, and Johnny also runs on his forefoot, but doesn't quite have the same hip function. And you can sort of watch those two because there's lots of footage of them running together. And you can kind of see hip function versus tight hips and feet. And like I say, Alistair's, might just be an N of 1. It's difficult to sort of try and teach that as a formula, Anyway, so we have the plantar fascia, elastic band, that goes from the heels to the toes, stores energy, helps drive the windlass, is continuous, wrapping around the bone, so via a bit of a detour with Achilles tendon. So often you can increase the length or health of the Achilles tendon by rolling out your foot and restoring sort of pliability to your foot. Plantar intrinsics, okay, these are the big ones. Abductor helicis, flexor digitorum brevis, quadratus plantar, lumbricals. They're sort of the arch tuners, or they lock the midfoot. Quadratus plantar is 4 layers deep. It's the deepest layer of your feet. It takes a while to get there. Really importantly, if I could look back at one thing that I wished I'd known when I was young, or even wished I'd known 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would start people with short foot exercises more. I've been told this. I was just resistant to it for some reason. And I think it is because of the cueing. People said you should shorten and have a short foot and then run like that. And I think this short foot's kind of really similar to the pelvic floor, okay? You need to learn how to contract it, and then you need to learn how to let it go, okay? So the short foot, you can't run with a short foot. Short foot is an exercise. Contract, hold, make very sure you let go. And very similar to the ankle sort of alignment, you should do your short foot with your foot supinated, so you're on the outside of your foot, neutral, and on the inside, so loading up the first met column. And also when you do short foot, your toes shouldn't contract down. So you need to be able to shorten your foot in those 3 planes and not have toes that crunch. Okay. We have 3 arches: medial longitudinal arch, which is our famous one that only humans have, okay, and a lateral longitudinal lateral longitudinal arch, which for most people, when I do short foot exercises, because I'm not a dum-dum and I didn't do them, we'd really concentrate on activating the lateral arch and letting go, because in my mind, I felt like the windlass mechanism develops the medial arch, and I just didn't want people to have a locked midfoot. But again, it's so obvious in hindsight. Like if you contract and relax your midfoot, it'll learn to unlock. So do your your short foot exercises in all three planes. And we have a transverse arch in the forefoot, which is very, very important. And it needs to spread to be healthy and create elasticity. And that's the big problem with tight shoes, compressed forefoot transverse arch, and obviously a deviated big toe. And then we have the big toe, the propulsion lever, the most important toe you own. Yes. Okay, but where are the wings of your feet on the outside? Where's 76% of your gait cycle, including landing and loading on the outside? Okay, and then we get to the big toe on basically rolling off your forefoot. Some people don't have a rigid foot and learn to compensate and roll to the outside. Some people have perfectly healthy big toes, but also don't load them. So you're rolling off a forefoot. I understand strengthening the big toe, how important it is for stability. But again, I think if you think a little further upstream, a lot of people have calcaneal inversion, okay, or maybe eversion. And a lot of people have a forefoot to rear foot alignment problem. So forefoot varus is very common. That's when your big toe is higher off the ground if you put your ankle in neutral and your baby toe. So if I have a forefoot varus and I make my big toe press down on the ground, I'm basically I'm very likely to not now have a neutral ankle. So I'm compromising my entire upstream mechanics just to get the big toe on the ground. The foot is remarkable. It's got 33 joints. You can strengthen your big toe. You can make your foot make any shape. People without arms can brush their teeth, type text with their toes. So yeah, you can train your foot to make almost any shape or do anything. But again, in terms of structure, I would say learn to get a neutral ankle first. Learn to unlock your midfoot. Learn to get a neutral calcaneus. Okay? And a lot of that, my favorite is ball on head. So do the ball on head exercises. It'll help your ankle alignment and forefoot alignment much more than you think. From there, your big toe is going to start finding the ground without you strengthening it, pushing it down, trying to make it happen, right? Your foot will unwind, your foot will unlock, your forefoot varus will reduce, you've got a stable calcaneus, you've got a stable ankle. That's a great framework to start saying, okay, my big toe is going to get involved in my gait and I can strengthen it from here. But strengthening the big toe without unlocking the midfoot, without restoring ankle calcaneal alignment, without understanding sort of neutral ankle is, okay, I don't think it's the best strategy and entry point in. And I used to obsess with the big toe. I think I told the story when I first treated Amber Neben, who's a world time trial champion. She had chronic pelvis pain for 2 years that no one could fix. Started with a big toe. So I am cognizant of the big toe. Okay, I'm just saying you're probably better served making sure that do it the other way first, and big toe function kind of takes care of itself, and you can enhance it and you can definitely help it. But definitely, if you don't have neutral ankles and a stable, like a neutral calcaneus, and you have a forefoot varus, I'm not sure you should be consciously in your gait cycle trying to use your big toe. That I think might be a mistake. And also, again, like a lot of big toe rehab is with torso, so head and shoulders ahead of your hips. Often people doing sort of big toe down in aeroplane positions, or you might be doing it in a squat position, or you might be doing it in a single leg standing position. In mid stance, in gait, when you're walking and running, the weight is on the lateral column of your foot. Your big toe doesn't even need to touch the ground, as important and amazing as it is. Okay, so again, at this point, instead of sort of internally rotating your tibia or pronating or collapsing your knee to try and use your big toe as a stability device and then pushing out of that, which is shortening your arch and activating your arch when it's not supposed to be active at this stage, probably, I don't think is a great strategy. I think the better strategy is get everything neutral aligned, then the big toe naturally is on the ground, and from that point, I would start integrating sort of this notion of a stable big toe in the middle of your foot, but it's kind of equal priority to everything in terms of stability. Does it make sense? It's literally like, when you teach people proper joint mechanics, bony mechanics, lining up your joints, your balance improves and your stability improves. A lot of people who have poor balance, poor alignment, can't stack those joints properly, are on an Airx balance mat trying to increase their balance. Okay, you don't have a balance problem, you have a stack alignment problem. You're inherently unstable. You need to increase your inherent stability and alignment, and then you will be stable and your balance will improve. Okay, so nothing wrong with doing all of these things. I'm just trying to prioritize the way I think about it, the order and sequence that I work in, and what's likely to sort of paint you out of the corner quicker. Okay, so really getting your feet strong is a big deal. Okay, so we talked about short foot, we talked about neutral ankles. After that, once you have those sort of two things, I start doing a lot of forefoot control. So foot behind knee, knee behind hip, your front foot elevated slightly so that you know that the back foot is the business foot. Okay, because all that force transmission through your forefoot happens with your knee behind your hip and your ankle behind your knee. So train it in that position. Okay, you don't have to get up into your forefoot doing like a calf raise or seated calf raise. That's not as relevant as at the end phase of. So for those of you familiar, that's like the awesomizer. Okay, we might have a special guest today, so I'm going to just sort of get through this. Okay, so that's really, really important. And I like soft toes, neutral ankles, because you need to learn to use your forefoot as a hinge. People that have been wearing shoes all their life and never ran barefoot, walking barefoot, you don't bend your toe that much. Okay, or you can end up not bending your toe that much. Or walking in minimal shoes, maybe you don't bend your forefoot that much. Running barefoot, really, you're going to bend your big toe more than you've bent it. And certainly sprinting barefoot is a whole nother enchilada, right? So you've got to approach those with extreme caution. But generally speaking, people are really bad at safely loading their forefoot and rolling off your forefoot, which is really where the big toe's time to shine is. Okay. In terms of, we talked about running, and this is where we got into hot water. I said, I think everyone should be able to run barefoot. Okay, if you're terrified of actually walking to the bathroom with no shoes on, you're a long way from that. Okay, like you're applying for your citizenship. You haven't got a green card yet. Okay, so you just try and walk around a little bit more barefoot. Get confident. Start doing your foot exercises, your ankle alignment exercises. Start becoming competent. Stand on a rope, stand on different surfaces, mush your feet around. That's where you're at. Okay. If you're reasonably competent and healthy and you're not too concerned, like the progression of barefoot running is probably 1 minute slower than your easy pace. Okay, because the faster you run, the more you bend your forefoot, and I promise you, you're not good at bending your forefoot. So if your normal easy pace is 5 minutes a K, run barefoot 7 minutes a K. Okay, slower than your easy pace, 1 minute, and do that twice a week. And build up by 1 minute a week over 20 weeks. So in 6 months' time, you are running 15 to 20 minutes slower than your easy pace twice a week. I don't think anyone's ever got injured doing that protocol. And certainly if you knew this isn't working for me, there's advanced warning signs you can back off. Okay? So we don't need any drama. But if you're scared of just walking around barefoot, that's not the protocol for you. You need to be not scared of walking barefoot. Minimal shoes, it's kind of the same. The safe approach to minimal shoes is walk in them for 10 minutes a day. See how you go for a week, and then start adding 10 minutes every week after that. Okay, so just take your time. The most likely time you are to get injured with barefoot running or minimal shoes is probably going to be at about 2 months. Okay, because your muscles have strengthened, but your bones and tendons have not yet caught up. So you need to be very, very conservative from the 2 month to about the 5 month period. And then at about 6 months, everything starts normalizing. And now you can say, okay, now we can start the green card application process. Okay, you're not yet a citizen of the barefoot world. It takes probably 5 years to develop really strong feet. Okay, and that's if you're patient, persistent, don't get injured. It takes, or even longer, it takes 10 years. These are, your foot was designed, or your foot needs stimulation as you develop as a human being for 20 years to have like awesome feet mechanics. And you skipped a 20-year process, and now because you read a book and you pumped or you heard a podcast, you're like, oh shit, I want this next week. Okay, just cool your jets. Okay, it takes time, be patient. And definitely, and you can hear all sorts of anecdotal things, like, so people, have these transformative barefoot experiences, and you say, fuck, I want that. I'm so frustrated with what was put out there. So you can get into trouble. One of the people, if you have Haglund's and insertional Achilles tendinopathy, so that's the Achilles tendon down on the bone, you're really, really sensitive to increased ankle dorsiflexion, and minimal shoes or barefoot will increase and demand more ankle dorsiflexion out of you. There's two ways of superficially increasing ankle dorsiflexion, not superficially, like quite quickly opening up that space. Make sure you have internal tibial rotation, which we've talked about. And also, you can massage your tibialis anterior muscle down. So your tibialis anterior muscle, if it's tight or shortened, remember we talked about, I'm really not a big fan of curling your toes towards your knee in the gait cycle. If you've been doing that, you'll have a short tibialis anterior tendon probably, and that will lock your tibia in external rotation. So you can sort of massage or foam roll out your tibialis anterior and really focus on letting it go as you travel over your connected leg. For people that want to get into minimal walking and running, this is turning into minimal walking and barefoot podcast, walking backwards, because why? You step back, soft toes, okay? Learn the hinge of your forefoot, then heel down, and then you travel over that leg. It really helps you unlock your hip, and it really helps you unlock your midfoot. Okay, so like learning walking and running in reverse really helps. Okay, another big low-hanging fruit safe way is toe spaces. So if I pulled my foot up and showed you on this video, I've got toe spaces in at the moment. Okay, so, and let me show you. No, let me not show you. There's going to be all sorts of creaking and groaning. Okay. So toe spaces, start about 15 minutes a day. See how you feel. Be gentle walking around in them. They can be worn inside like minimal shoes with a really wide toe box. But generally speaking, just walk around them at home for a while. It's pretty profound what they'll do. And again, standing on a foot fixer, you opening up your transverse arch, mushing your feet maybe on a rope, tactile stimulus, walking around on uneven surfaces, all of that, you've got to just really, really be gentle and careful with. Okay. So where are we now? Manage the load. Okay. Yeah. And don't run through foot pain. Next page. Okay, let's have a look on live. I probably should have checked on here earlier. Hello, everyone. So here we have some current viewers. Drew's just arrived. So let's have a look at questions. Hi, please help a guy who wore slides and slippers for many years, even at home. That plus having been a cyclist messed up my foot mechanics and proprioception. Okay, get a foot fixer. Here comes Drew. Oh, not Drew, my mystery guest. Okay. A couple of years and go barefoot at home, but my left foot, I still a bit conscious of not to grip with a big toe when running and walking. Hey, here's my man.
How we doing?
Okay, let's have one moment. Let's hook Drew up here quickly. Here's a paper chair.
Sweet.
Oh. I'm going to give you a camera, boss.
Yeah. Look at this.
I'm sick of me waffling on from about Drew. I'm so excited.
Yeah, this is cool.
I sabotaged Drew.
Oh, you can kind of start to see me. We've got a whole, this is
look
legit.
at us. We got a whole thing going, dude.
Whoa.
So there we go. Welcome, Drew.
Hey, everyone.
My man. Yeah.
It's cool to be at the new studio.
Yeah.
This is sweet.
The sound's not so great at the moment, so I've got to sort that out. But there's tools coming to improve the sound.
This is amazing. This room was made for this.
No, I've got a better room than this.
Oh,
seriously? You haven't seen the bunker.
Okay. All right. Well, this is pretty good.
Yeah, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone questions for Drew? Look at this. We multitask. Here are the questions.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the future, right?
I think so.
Yeah. The live stuff is cool. I definitely see a lot more people leaning back into that. And just...
I think if you can't speak, if you don't know what you're You don't know your subject matter if you can't do live.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can't get put on the spot and you can't answer questions. And people want that level of competence, not, because AI can basically manufacture anything.
For sure.
Anyway. So what have you been up to?
Yeah. So a lot the last few weeks. I raced last weekend. It went great. I ran a 351 mile.
That's your PB, right?
That's my track PB.
Yeah.
I've run 349 on the roads, but everyone knows you can't tell people you ran, your real track PB or your real PB's from the track. Cause there's hills and downhills and whatnot. So so training for Worlds is going really well. We got like 3.5 weeks to go. We'll race one more time, but 3 weeks before this I had a kid. So a lot is going on. But yeah, things have been great. It's been really fun to, we sort of tried some new training for this build. So we took a little bit of a risk.
You risk taker, you.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of running on the treadmill, a lot of threshold like stuff, and really like not pushing the envelope at all, just ticking the box. But a lot of like the double threshold. So 2 double thresholds in a week. And I had no idea how I was going to go. And I felt amazing running in the mile.
Yeah.
Like I was like smiling with like 500 to go. Like I was very in control. And I'm just really strong. So it's exciting. Yeah, I'm in a good spot. I think Worlds will, I really think I can like medal and do well there. So that's the plan. The American record is 13:20 for 5K. So I definitely think that's, within grasp as well. So yeah, I just think, we have a few more hard workouts. We got one like really hard session in like 10 days, and then we're pretty much just coasting into Worlds. So yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. And that is a lot that's gone on. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So basically you're Norwegian now.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, sort of Drew Hunter.
I'm ready to get the call from Jakob and just be like, when are you coming out to Norway? His brothers are old now, so I can be his next big bro.
We'll call you Drew Cobb.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Drew Cobb Hunterbritson.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay. Yeah, I loved what the treadmill brought for your running. I think it brought a sort of ease and relaxation. You definitely started opening up a sense of rhythm as well, and so it's not just like obviously the physiology in time. And so, yeah, your running really does look great. So that's nice and exciting.
Yeah.
And then we were talking earlier on this, I was talking about like your brain and nervous system is such a powerful prediction machine. Mm-hmm. And generally speaking, when you start doing something right, you have this before the result, like, oh, this opened up. This has opened up for me. I now can see that. And that's really, really healthy rather than like, I don't really feel it, but I'm going to talk myself into it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. Yeah. The treadmill stuff is good because, we talked a little bit about it over text, but like send you a video on the treadmill and you're like, you look awesome. And it's like, once you feel that good running there, you're like, I know I at least want this to transfer to, the ground. And maybe there's some other things that like, I need to keep doing to have that go, exactly how I want it to feel. But it was like, oh, even looking at it myself, I was like, that's how I should look when I'm running, all the time, ideally. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's been good.
Yeah. So there's a question just popped up here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How does neural tension develop, and is it linked to lack of movement? So yes, neural tension can be linked to lack of movement. It's really, really interesting. It's a really broad, vague term for something that's kind of not that scientifically evidenced. Okay. But the interesting thing about Drew and his story was, so you drove back 6 hours, and Drew sent a picture of me running, and sometimes people say, hey, what do you think? And I'm like, oh, shit. But you can't reply, oh, shit, are you okay?
Yeah.
But kind of Drew was on the same page. It's like, okay, things are not working well. And there's that almost for you almost become too reactive, too short, too tight. And I'm like, so what is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of it's like sort of neural tension. And a big part of that, getting out of that for you was crawling patterns, right?
Yeah.
So just, there's different ways to sort of unwind this tension that we see. A lot of neural tension, which we were talking about earlier with your feet and ankle alignment, which you've really did experience when I first worked on you, is in your upper cervical region. So you unwind the neck and suddenly your feet hit the ground a whole lot better. And that's that could be from whiplash trauma, screens, modern life. So there's that question.
Yeah.
Hope that helps.
Yeah, no, I was going to add to that. It's funny. It was a good coaching and moment because I sent Lawrence a video of me looking rough and he didn't respond saying, he just flipped the question back on me and he said, how do you feel? And I said, rough, So I actually I was like, that's a good, he obviously is smart enough to know, like, it's like, how, when things are going well, like when you're in the zone, you're in the zone. But it was like, it was nice to have, that sort of like, okay, I feel bad, I'm looking bad, but now let's do something about it, So yeah, the crawling stuff was definitely helpful. And that was a good coaching moment. I've shared that story with a few people actually. Yeah.
And you share the good stuff, Drew.
Yeah, I know for sure.
But that's also like the treadmill at that time for you. So it has a specific purpose almost. It was the right place at the right time. No distractions, constant. You can sort of zone out, find your rhythm, find your flow, which is something that you would like to have developed. So, it's just in general for people, because like, is treadmill good or is treadmill bad? Kind of depends.
Yeah.
Right place, right time, amazing.
Yep.
Too much, you're going to get outside and you're like, what is this place? or you're running it's kind of like what happened during lockdown, right? So many people got so strong on bicycles.
Yeah.
And got into Zwifting and cycling. I mean, they were absolute hazard on the road. Like, they've never ridden, don't know how to brake, don't know how to ride in a pack. No context.
Yeah,
but really strong.
Yeah.
So like there is, you have to run with other people at some stage.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good to find a balance. Like my, when you're doing two, double threshold workouts, like only the afternoon sessions would be on the treadmill. So we'd still go outside in the morning. Cause like you said, I've been doing a lot of training with Reed Fisher. He's training for the Chicago Marathon and it's been really fun. Like I've done a lot of sort of solo-ish training the last 6 months and so has he. And so for us to sort of sync for this block has been like you said, it's really important to have people around and, to find a flow with someone else and not just be, banging your head up against the wall in your own basement with no one there except for you. You get a little kooky. Yeah.
But again, like for you have to learn to be relaxed with people around you. And if suddenly that's a novel experience, it's like, it's going to be really hard to settle in, find your rhythm. Other people will pull you out of your rhythm very, very quickly. And you don't know what your rhythm is. What I mean? So along those lines.
Totally.
Cool. And what else has been going on?
Just so our daughter was born 3.5 weeks ago, Catherine Frances Hunter. We're calling her Kate. She's perfect, but we've been adjusting we got a lot of help early on. So like my mother-in-law was out here for like 10 days. Then my wife's sister was out here. So we've had a lot of help, but now it's just our crew. And so we're sort of like getting into the new pattern. So for me to come up and get treatment with Lawrence, like my dad came over to help with the baby. And so, but we have a lot of support and, that's been fun. Like, I think, it's our third kid. So I feel like we're getting better at it, but we're also adding more to the mix. So it's sort of like you get more confidence, but also it's just more. But I ran really well. I mean, I feel like most people aren't racing 3 weeks after they have a kid, especially not women. But yeah, like women impossible. But yeah, so it's been good and been getting as much good amounts of sleep as as much as we can. It's been really fun. But Copenhagen has been the big focus for a while, and that's that'll be the big one. So yeah. What about you?
Moved house, as you know.
That's a pretty big deal. Lawrence's new secret dojo is pretty sweet. It's a pretty epic drive up here.
Yeah, it's an epic drive. The views are fantastic.
So this is funny. I don't know how, I haven't walked around the property yet. Maybe I'll get the tour after this. But my brother was like, he wants to get married in Colorado, and I come up here and I'm like, I'm gonna ask Lawrence if we can just get married at his house. Like it's the perfect property for it. Like it could be a wedding venue at this point.
Yeah,
so
it's cool. We can see Denver from here.
It's crazy. Yeah.
So moving, we're busy through the running revamp.
Yep. How's that been?
Second one. Yeah, it's really good. It's not as big as the first one, but I didn't put as much effort into marketing it.
Yeah.
Because I was distracted. But it's it's great because we've got the learning from the first one. We've got a sort of a better sense of structure and timing, so I'm pretty happy about that. And what else are we doing? We're selling foot fixes now. We're selling sort of a little bit online retail going on. I don't know. I've got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Just generally, just head down and working. I'm really, really trying to be productive in terms of online content, video, courses, structured, layering it up. And then this is new, this live stream, which I'm pretty excited about. I think it's great.
Yeah. No, this is cool. I guess another new thing is, I'm doing like a documentary for Copenhagen. So I've had like, someone following me around and filming. I actually almost invited him up here for the session today, but I was just like, coordinating didn't work out. But so that's something we're going to drop. It's going to be like 30 to 35 minutes documentary after Copenhagen. And yeah, he's just been following me the last like 3 months basically.
And he's going to Copenhagen as well.
Yeah. So he's going to Copenhagen. Actually, we're hiring someone in Copenhagen. He had another gig so he couldn't come to Copenhagen, but yeah, A6, my sponsor A6, Thule and Training Peaks, they all put in financial support. And so we've dropped 2 like teaser episodes on YouTube. So I've done like 2, so now I'm a YouTuber too. So, so we actually dropped another episode today, of my past weekend in Falmouth, Massachusetts.
So if you don't know, Drew's like hammer and axe. Is this on your personal
YouTube? Yeah.
Drew,
Yeah.
Drew Cobb Hunter Britson.
Just exactly. Yeah.
Drew Hunter. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's so that's been fun. Like the YouTube, in my opinion, YouTube is the best form of social media at this point. Yeah. Like by a country mile. Yeah. So I'm glad that I'm finally like doing that stuff. And yeah, I think the production value of this is going to be really, really cool. We're trying to do more. I bought like a Sony camera and I've been filming, like basically vlogging in my house. Cause like we have like, he's come to my sessions, he's going to get race footage, but he also wanted like behind the scenes stuff. And he was like, honestly, man, just get this. I will edit all of it, but like almost sort of like vlog your entire last 2 or 3 months. And then we'll put together a documentary of everything. So I took it to the hospital. My wife was giving birth. She was not stoked to see me pull out the camera right after the kid was here. But, I think it'll be really cool. And I'm hoping to do like more stuff like this in the future, if people like it, I don't know. It's been fun for me to see.
Let us know, people, because we've talked about this for a while, and I agree with you. I think, honestly, YouTube is the place. This style I like. I think social media needs to add value, or you shouldn't be on it.
For sure, yeah.
Like it comes with a responsibility. Yeah. So, I like this. We'll see how it goes. So let us know, people, whether we should do more Drew lives and riff, and let me know if you've got comments. I'm going to go and work and treat Drew.
I can't wait. I haven't had a treatment in a while.
I told the fox to come by because there is a fox that comes past.
That's perfect, yeah.
The fox is Drew's spirit animal.
Yes,
so
yeah.
We like fox sightings when we're treating Drew.
That's a good sign. That means Copenhagen's going to go well.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. Thank you from Drew, Hammer and Axe. Check it out. And Drew Hunter, YouTube. I'm going to have to subscribe.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
You subscribe too? Yes, for sure. Thank you.
This is fun. We'll do this again.
Yeah, we'll definitely do this again. Thanks for coming around. Okay. Bye, everyone. Take care. Good luck with the Worlds, Drew. There we go. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Love that.
Yeah, me too. This is your first Worlds team, hey?
I've qualified for one and then was injured, so didn't get to run. So yes, this will be the first one I run at. Yeah. I'm excited. Yeah.
Okay, from Drew and us, cheers. We got work to do. Thank you. Take care. Look after yourselves. Like yourself, subscribe to yourself, turn on your notifications, because you never know when the universe is going to send you a message.
Boom. Can you share that now?